In this lecture, we will cover Azure Network and Application Security Groups fundamentals. So we will start with NSGs. Azure Network Security Groups act as a virtual firewall for your virtual machines in order to control inbound and outbound traffic. So inbound traffic refers to traffic that is originated outside Azure, so outside the virtual network. So for example, traffic that is initiated from your laptop and trying to connect there to the virtual machine, or traffic that is coming from the on-premises data center and then going to the virtual machine. While outbound traffic refers to traffic that is sourced from the virtual machine and going outside, again to the internet, to your on-premises data center, etc. The network security groups enforce security at the subnet or NIC card level, so the network interface card, and different VMs can have different NSGs applied. Now, in a network security group, you add rules that control inbound traffic to instances and really separate rules that control outbound traffic. So let's go through an example and understand more about inbound security rules first. So first we define the virtual network and we have chosen this IP address space, so 10.0.0.0 and /16. Then we created subnet 1, 10.0.1.0/24, so a smaller portion from the big IP addressing space. And now we are running web server 01 and we have there a private IP address, so that has been allocated from subnet 1, 10.0.1.4, and also a public IP address so that we are able to connect to web server 01 through SSH, so because this is a Linux machine. Now these are the port rules, so inbound port rules, and this is a screenshot from the Azure portal. We will connect to the Azure portal in the next lecture and we will continue with the hands-on lab. So inbound port rules, so this refers to traffic that is coming from outside Azure virtual network and arriving at the virtual machine level. Good. We have here a bunch of security rules, and these are taken into consideration and evaluated in a top-down fashion. So first we have this rule, the priority is 300. So the lower the number, the higher the priority the rule has. The name is SSH, and as you can see, the source is any, destination any, and the action is allowed. So let's put it into simple words. I will allow traffic that is coming from any source, going to any destination, and specifically TCP port 22, which is SSH. Now the next rule, priority is 65,000. The name is allow VNet inbound. So action is allow. Let's translate this one as well. Traffic from any resource in the virtual network going to another resource in the virtual network will be permitted. So that's why if we define another virtual machine working in this virtual network, then by default traffic is permitted between web server 01 and another virtual machine running in the same virtual network, and this is because of the second rule here, allow VNet inbound. Now next one, 6501, allow Azure load balancer inbound. So remember the virtual machine scale set, the VMSS example. Well, I said then that traffic is arriving at the load balancer, and then the load balancer will just split the traffic, share it between different virtual machines there. So actually the traffic is coming from the load balancer and going to the virtual machine. So that's why it is permitted by default, because we have here this inbound port rule. And the last rule, 65500, deny all inbound. Well, if you don't explicitly permit the traffic through a rule above this rule, then the traffic will be denied. So as you can see in the last column, the action is deny. So traffic from any source to any destination, any port, any protocol will be denied. Good. So remember that we tried there to connect through SSH, and that was permitted. That's why we ended up configuring the Linux machine and transforming that into a web server. Well, actually the connection hit the NSG, so the network security group, and because we have this first rule available here, the SSH rule permitting traffic, SSH traffic, then that's why we were able to connect to the web server, or actually to the Ubuntu Linux machine, and then we configured it as a web server. Next, we also tried to connect from our browser through HTTP to the web page, so to our web browser. to the index.html file, and that was not let's say accepted, and the reason is because we don't have any rule here that accepts HTTP traffic. And in the next lecture we will then go and add another inbound port rule in order to accept HTTP traffic, so we also solve the problem. Now let's cover also outbound security rules. So we have outbound port rules. This is a separate menu or separate tab there in the rules, and this refers to traffic that is originated from the web server machine, or anyway from the resource that is inside the virtual network, and leaving that, going to the internet, to on-premises data center, to other destination. Again, we have three rules. So allow VNet outbound, it is allowed, so traffic between resources in the VNet is allowed. Allow internet outbound, so the source is any, the destination is internet, meaning that traffic from any resource in the VNet and going outside, it is allowed. And again, the explicit deny, any other traffic that is not explicitly permitted will be denied. So these are the default rules for inbound port rules. Because we created a Linux machine, then the SSH rule was added by default, so we didn't do that, as you have seen up to now. Now let's cover also application security groups, or ASGs. Application security groups allow you to group virtual machines and define network security policies based on those groups. In an ASG, you add rules that control inbound traffic to instances and separate rules that control outbound traffic, and basically the logic is the same. Now again, as an example, we have a virtual network, and then we have here two servers. Server 1 is part of the web traffic ASG, and server 2 is part of SSH traffic ASG. So let's think that we want to permit web traffic, so HTTP, with the first ASG and SSH traffic with the second ASG. So what you need to know is that the ASG, the application security group, is applied at the network interface level. And once you do that, as you can see, we have inbound port rules, outbound port rules, and then application security groups. So I have applied here the web traffic ASG as a label. And now in the inbound port rules, for example, when you have an HTTP session, so a client is trying to connect to your web server, then you can have in your inbound port rules a rule stating that TCP, or anyway, any protocol port 80, source any, so from any source, going to destination web traffic ASG. So HTTP traffic coming from anywhere going to virtual machines that have the web traffic ASGs applied. And because server 2, maybe if it's also configured as an HTTP server, because we haven't applied the web traffic ASG, then it will not accept any HTTP traffic, so only server 1. So that's the logic behind the scenes. Thank you, and see you in the next lecture.